And I will now take roll call so that we know who on the committee is in attendance. And so Curtis from 1026 West Montrose.
Kylie, I know that he was having trouble with the link, so he might join in just a second. I sent him a link again.
Perfect, thank you. And then Douglas Smith from 3600 North Lake.
Here.
Thanks, Doug. Jim Hennigan, 3660.
So Jim couldn't make it. This is Mary Setnikar. I'm attending for him.
Great, thank you, Mary. Linda, 3750.
Here.
Great, thank you, Linda. George, 3930. I thought I saw George.
Here.
Great, thank you, George. Anna, 3950.
Here.
Thank you. Robert from 4250 North Marine.
Hi there, I am here.
Thanks, Robert. Michael, 4300 Marine. No, okay. Stuart from 4848 Sheridan. And then Kurt, 555 Cornelia. Susie from 655 Irving Park.
Here.
Thanks, Susie. Alice from 700 Bittersweet.
Here.
Thanks, Alice. Patrick, 828 Grace.
Present.
Thank you. Regina, 850 Eastwood. Glenn, 920 Wilson. Brian, Ainsley Winmore, Block Club. Okay. John from Beacon Block Club.
Present.
Thanks, John. Alex from Buena Park Neighbors. Okay. Ed from Castlewood. Jack from Clarendon Park Neighbors. Jeff from Clark Street Walk Club.
Here.
Thanks, Jeff. Scott from Dover Street.
Here.
Thank you, Scott. Michael from East Lakeview.
Here.
Thank you. Jason from Graceland Wilson. Okay. And then thank you, Glenn.
Kylie, sorry, Stuart Berman here. He was having some tech difficulties, I know. I just he messaged me a minute ago.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stu.
Thanks.
And then Glenn, I got your chat that you are here as well. So I will mark Glenn as present. And then James from Gunnison Block Club. And then we've got Stuart. Louis from Lakeside Area Neighbors.
Here.
Thank you. Maureen from Lakeview East Chamber. Diane from 4550 Clarendon. Marty from Magnolia Malden Block Club.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Jackie, Nonprofits Entertainment.
Here.
Thank you, Jackie. Mark from North Halstead Business Alliance. Maria from Nuna Block Club. Rochelle from Racine Clifton. Oh,
Same
Curtis.
thing there, Kylie. She's having tech difficulties. I know Maggie was sending her a new link.
Okay, perfect.
That
Thank
was
you.
Rochelle.
I'll mark Rochelle too. And then Curtis, I got your message for here from 1026 Montrose. Mark from Real Estate.
Here. Here.
Thanks, Mark. Tony, affordable housing. Luke, retail. Chester, transportation. Mike, triangle neighbors.
Present.
Thank you. Dan, Truman Square neighbors.
Hey there.
Thank you, Dan. Patrick, Uptown Chicago Commission.
Present.
Thank you. Sarah, Uptown United Chamber of Commerce.
Present.
Thank you. And Michael, Voice of the People.
Here.
Thank you, Michael. Was there anybody who came on late that I might have missed, or anyone who is here that I haven't marked present?
Yes, Alex Walking with Buena Park Neighbors.
Thank you, Alex. I've gotcha.
Jason DeVore from Graceland Wilson Neighbors Association.
Thank you, Jason. And is that Tony? that I
Yes.
just- Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Tony Mills.
All good. Thank you. All right.
Tony is outside. She's brave. I see that.
I'm in a breezeway, so I'm in between indoor outdoor.
It looks pretty hot.
Still brave, Tony. Still brave.
Still brave.
Okay. Thank you. I believe I have everyone who's present, but feel free to message me if you think I might have missed you in the count. And then Alderman Cappleman, handing it back to you.
Thank you, Kylie. Our zoning development committee is meeting tonight to discuss the K. Giles LLC and CA Ventures proposal at 640 West Irving Park Road, which is also referred to as the American Islamic College and the Immaculata Project. Out of respect to all of you who are volunteering your time to be a zoning rep, I will be moving this meeting along to keep it to 2 hours. So with that, I will hand it over to the developers.
Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. It's Rolando Acosta. I am the attorney for the developer. Here with me today is Keith Giles from the development team, Louis Abuna, our traffic consultant, Jerry Wallach from Perkins Eastman, who is the architect for the senior building, and Greg Gibson from Level Architecture, who is the architect for the Immaculata building. I'm going to share my screen, try to walk you through a presentation to explain the project and some of the comments from the community, as well as the city and the state that we have evaluated. If at any moment I'm trying to move through it quickly, obviously we can go back if you have a particular question or want me to go more in depth into anything. Let me attempt now to share screen. And hopefully everyone can see my screen. Yep, thanks, Kylie. Oh, I gotta do it this way. So I think many of you probably know the Immaculata site. It sits at the northwest corner of Marine and Irving Park Road, also bordered on the north by Bittersweet. You can see it roughly outlined here on the west side of Lakeshore Drive. The site itself has one building, really. It was built in 2 phases over the years. A 1920s vintage structure that has the red pitched roof that you see in the foreground. And then there was a 1950s addition that generally has the flat roofs, and you can see it extending to the west as well as the north. Both were designed by the same architect, Barry Byrne. All of this complex is it's in the Federal Register as a historic place. It is also a City of Chicago landmark. At its peak, this school housed up to 1,200 students. It closed in 1981, which shortly thereafter, the American Islamic College purchased the property, has operated it since, having its own institution in the building, as well as others like the French school that was on the property for a while. You can see here outlined in yellow the property. It's approximately 3 acres of land. You can see the original Immaculata building with the red roof, the 1950s addition, And in the center, you see a kind of T-shaped parking lot. And also to the western edge, up near the Paddington, a green space that is currently maintained on the property. The proposal is to rehabilitate the existing buildings in accordance with city and federal and state landmark guidelines and repurpose it for apartments, looking at a transit-oriented development containing 245 units, predominantly studios and 1 bedrooms, a few 2 bedrooms that have been added within the existing buildings. The facades, the exterior of the building will be refurbished, retained, rehabilitated, unchanged essentially, keeping with the landmarks. In the parking lot, kind of in this, most of this T-shape, there's a proposal to build a new senior building. It will have 192 units, of which 100 will be independent living units. The other 92 are split between assisted living and memory care. Walking you through the site, you can see the Immaculata buildings in gray and the new building outlined between the whitish color and the light green color. You can tell that at the west edge, that playground, current green space is retained as a resident garden. So that separation is maintained and it's maintained as green space. The area outlined in yellow is, I'm sorry, in light green is the base of the building. That rises approximately 4 stories and that ends at the 4th floor where there is, hence the green color, a terrace on the roof of it. There's also a small portion of the 5th floor that projects out and terminates also with another roof terrace there. The building from that point on, from the 5th floor upwards, is really an L-shaped building shown by the hard black outline. And this shape, this location, was selected in concert with the cities as well as the state and federal landmark regulators as the best location to locate this proposed building in concert with the existing landmark. Taking you to a ground floor plan of the proposal. The ground floor is elevated towards the entrance of the building, hence why you see it left blank in this particular area. The building is set back approximately 50 feet from Bittersweet. The ground floor would have a lobby facing Bittersweet, which would be the main entrance to the senior building. The main entrance to the Immaculata building will remain as is off of Irving Park Road. The small parking lot to the south of the Immaculata building will remain and be used for resident parking, visitor parking, as well as a location for ride share and car share locations. There's a secondary entrance to Immaculata located right here that also will be retained. And then there is both pedestrian and vehicular access between the 1920s building and the 1950s addition off of Marine Drive that will be used as an additional means of vehicular ingress. And I'll walk you through that in a moment. This is showing the proposed vehicular access plan to the building. So you can see that the main entrance is for the senior building is off of Bittersweet. And the parking that is within the base of the building, this building will have 4 levels of parking containing 98 parking spaces within the base. And then it will rise to the units. There's approximately 22 parking spaces in the Irving Park lot, where we also indicate the ride share location. But the main entrance to the building will be off of Bittersweet. That's where we anticipate visitors would access the parking garage. All of the vehicles that we have control over. So that would be staff coming to the senior building to service the assisted living as well as the memory care. Other service personnel that come to the property for waste hauling, deliveries, etc., will be directed to the Marine Drive entrance to avoid putting those vehicles on Bittersweet. So they would access the property from Marine Drive between the 2 buildings, go to the loading area if necessary. If they were going to park, they would go to the parking area to the south. They would then exit off on Marine and head east to Marine, I'm sorry, on Bittersweet and head east to Marine Drive, creating sort of a clockwise maneuver around the site. Again, the idea here is being conscious of traffic concerns expressed by the neighbors, that we are dividing the use of the multiple entrances, that the vehicles coming to the site, and trying to keep as much of the traffic as possible off of Bittersweet. The building over time, we've had over 12 meetings with the community members and many meetings with the city. Sorry about that. The city, the state, and we had a review of the proposal by the federal government, initial review called a blue sheet review. We initially proposed a 27-story building. It contained 495 units, between 265 in the Immaculata building and 230 in the senior building. That we heard a series of questions, comments, concerns throughout what would be late winter, early spring of last year. We took all of those into consideration, went back and revised our plan. Throughout it, also touching base with the city's Department of Planning, which had significant input into the design and the actual facades of these buildings. Also coordinating with the state historic preservation officer with respect to the relationship of the two buildings and the rehabilitation of the Immaculata buildings or the AIC buildings. Came back with a 22-story proposal, which you can see on the right of your screen. That is the proposal that exists today, with a reduced unit count by today to 437 units, still in the 22-story building. And the building facade now, you can see here, and you'll see better as I move through the slides, but the base is intended to be more of a solid look, more in keeping with the color scheme of Immaculata. The building above the base, the new building, has two different facades reflective of the two different versions of the existing buildings, with the more glass facade on the south having lots of vertical projection to it, similar to the windows in Immaculata, the vertical feel of the original Immaculata. Then the northern leg of the building has more of a punch window opening, which is more reminiscent of the 1950s addition to the building. Another view of the building, again, comparing the prior and the current. The prior building was approximately 314 feet tall with a penthouse above. The current building is 250 feet tall with the penthouse above. The penthouse in this case is screened as well as the mechanicals. So this uppermost floor that you see is not actually an occupiable floor, but it's really a screen around the mechanical equipment as well as the elevator penthouse. You can see the punch window facade still having some vertical elements to it. A view of the building from Irving Park, again, prior at 27 stories. At that point, the design was quite different. After all of the commentary from particularly the city's reviewers, design reviewers, you can see the two-step facade here with the masonry portion to the west with the punch window openings, similar to what is at the base in the addition, and then the glass portion of the building more to the east with that verticality reminiscent of Immaculata, the original building. Looking at it from the northwest, looking southeast, you can see various elements of the site plan, the enhanced forecourt, the separation between the buildings, the four-story addition or the four-story portion with the roof deck that I previously mentioned, the fifth floor projection that comes out into a roof deck. It's approximately 120 feet between the west wall of the proposed building above the fifth floor and the property line with the Paddington. So we retain the 60-foot separation with the green space at the base, and then there's approximately another 60 feet or so of separation between the low-rise portion of this building and its upper floors. Looking at it from Bittersweet with the enhanced forecourt, see the 50-foot setback. The lobby, as I mentioned earlier, is recessed, and that floor is raised approximately 14 feet above grade. Then the base which houses primarily the parking, but is clad to conceal that parking. And then the rest of the residential portions above. Immaculata remains as it is, except for its grounds. The landscaping is enhanced, creating a little pocket sitting area right here near the entrance. And you'll see some of the other additions to landscaping. There is a landscaped walk with a fence to be installed along the western property line adjacent to the 3 flats along Bittersweet. A view in the garden on the west, looking back at the building with senior amenity space to the left, and then a view of Immaculata on the right. This is the loading entrance. If you were to come in the Marine Drive entrance between the buildings and head west, this would be where the loading is. The parking is tucked in the back here as you go up into the garage. And the lower images are just views between the 2 buildings, one looking back at that marine entrance that I mentioned back here, and this looking straight between the 2 buildings. The idea is to install some murals between the 2 buildings to create a better facade than just essentially a blank wall immediately north of the Immaculata. So we heard some comments from all of the neighbors throughout all of our meetings, and this is a summary of the topics that were raised that we evaluated throughout this. I'm going to go further into some of these topics. A couple of them that I've already touched upon, the landmarks considerations, that has been reviewed at this point by the City of Chicago Landmark Division, as well as its design revisions, both of which are supportive of the current design. It's been reviewed by the state of Illinois with respect to Immaculata and the juxtaposition of the 2. And they have no comments that we haven't addressed. And we did an initial blue sheet review, which is almost a test view with the federal government that went up to the National Park Service, where it was reviewed. And the idea of putting the new building on the site was also supported. The design was significantly reviewed by the city to great detail. And what you're seeing today reflects those comments. Zoning consistency. So the current property is zoned RT4. And you can see it here. The red indicates a landmark under the city zoning map, but it's in a portion of the city where along Marine Drive to Sabo Lakeshore Drive, the predominant zoning seems to be RM6 or RM6.5. We're asking for a rezoning of the property under a plan development, which is a specific document that will key to these drawings and allow only what you've seen, if approved, to be constructed. We're asking for the same RM6 zoning that is consistent along the lakefront, although we're not fully building out to the extent of the RM6. And I will give you some of that detail as we move along. This is essentially a land use map showing the same pattern. RM6.5 south of Irving Park Road, which is actually a higher density district. RM6 to the west along south of Irving Park Road, but to the north along the lakefront, the exception, of course, being the Disney Magnet School, which is owned RT4. Sense of the development pattern, just as a Google Earth view, looking south, the site is approximately in the middle of the screen, and you can see the consistency of taller buildings along the Marine Drive to Sabo Lakeshore Drive frontage of the properties in this particular portion of the city. Some have questioned the need for senior housing. This is a $150 million investment in this property, about 50 million of that devoted to the rehabilitation of Immaculata, the under 100 million approximately being with the senior tower. The development team is very comfortable that there's a demand for this in the neighborhood, but here are some statistics for you to consider. First of all, the uptown population of nearly 60,000 people. There's roughly 18% of the population is in the 50 to 64 year range. Typically, your median age in a senior independent living building is late 60s, early 70s. The reason this number is important, because that's a trend in the population. This is a group that's aging, and probably as we get closer to the opening of this building, if we were approved, would be of age. So significant population, 190,000 people in the 3 zip codes represented by the area. We looked at a 2-mile area and studied what senior buildings existed. And we found that there were only 4 comparable buildings. And by comparable, we mean have independent living, have memory care, and have assisted living all in the same building. The only one that's actually in Uptown is the Admiral. There's two Brookdales that are further south in Lincoln Park. And there's the Breakers, which is north of Foster, which technically is not Uptown. Only one of the buildings has memory care, which is the Admiral with 17 units. 3 of the 4 buildings are over 30 years old. So this will be the Admiral at the lake is the newer building, approximately a decade old. This obviously will be a state-of-the-art building, not only with respect to technology, but with respect to air handling, as we've learned from the ongoing, hopefully waning COVID pandemic. This is a breakdown of locations, color-coded by types, and designating what types of housing they have. And you can see the first 4 being the 4 that I've mentioned above, and then others that are in the neighborhood, including some recent ones like the Artist Senior Living, which yes, is a senior building, but it's all devoted to assisted living and memory care with no independent living in the building. And some buildings like the self-help home, which do have all 3 components, but are over 50 years old, which we don't consider to be comparable. Traffic, certainly a topic that's been heavily discussed, heavily reviewed. From inception, this project was conceived with trying to minimize traffic in mind, keeping that in mind. We are at a high transit location. You can see in the map to the right, the many bus lines that traverse the area, as well as the red line / purple line with the Sheridan Road stop. Seniors, we thought that seniors, which historically have generated a lower parking and traffic demand, would be a good use for the new building. Transit-oriented apartments, studios and 1-bedrooms in the Immaculata building would not only fit kind of the shape and scale of Immaculata, but also would have the low traffic and parking demand associated with it. In terms of the senior building, van service is provided for the seniors at least 2 or 3 times a week. Obviously could be increased if demand is there. That will decrease the demand for parking on site. I will say with respect to parking specifically, that because the Immaculata building is a landmark, 0 parking technically by the zoning ordinance is required for the Immaculata building. And in terms of the senior building, the parking that is required is approximately 65 spaces. We're providing 118 parking spaces on site, 98 in the existing building and 22 in the parking lot. I guess that's 120. And which is roughly almost double that which is required. Staff shifts. So in terms of trying to decrease impact on streets, we've committed that staff shifts would occur off-peak. So, and that can be done in a senior building with control staff. So the staff, there would be 3 shifts, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The peak here is between 7 and 8 in the morning and 4 and 6 in the afternoon. So obviously we're trying to avoid that. Similarly with service vehicles, since those can be scheduled, they'd be scheduled to occur off-peak when there's more capacity on the streets. I previously talked about the multiple points of access using Marine Drive access, converting it to an inbound. It currently serves as an outbound to create that clockwise maneuver to limit the use of Bittersweet to only the easternmost portion. Staff service vehicles are all to use Marine Drive. We're going to provide on-site car sharing in the Irving Park lot. We've also committed to providing rideshare to the rideshare to be directed to the Irving Park lot, that kind of turnover activity that is likely in this building. Keeping all of those items in mind from the beginning, we then retained KLOA. Louis Abuna from KLOA is here. They are a well-experienced, well-known local traffic expert. They performed counts. Clearly, we were under COVID conditions while those counts were performed. However, Louis and KLOA is familiar with the area, had done some counts previously. But they also, CDOT always does counts. They do counts when they do roadway improvements. So they have historical counts on the area. And the counts by KLOA were calibrated to the CDOT counts to make sure that we weren't underrepresenting the number of cars, the traffic that was be generated. CDOT had counts for Cub games, so we took those into account and included them in the study. The traffic counts also get increased to account for growth, and it accounted for nearby development, particularly I think the one at the New Yorker was included, the future development there was included into the study. The key conclusions are shown by the 4 bullet points at the bottom, but because of the urban context, all of the many amenities in this area, as well as the alternative modes of transportation, we believe the trips generated by this development will be lessened. In terms of the Irving Park Marine intersection, probably the main intersection here, adjacent to the site, the total anticipated increased traffic is 2% of the total. That's not a notable impact. It did not change the operation of that intersection. And quite frankly, the anticipated traffic from this project didn't change the operation of any of the intersections impacted, at least not beyond design capacity. And you can see that in a Bittersweet Marine intersection, the morning peak, which is the most significant peak, because of the cut-through traffic that seemingly is unavoidable and unstoppable along Bittersweet. It's less than 3% of the total, about a 5-second delay. We also looked at alternative developments. One that was frequently mentioned was a school. It just so happened that the French school that occupied the property for a while, at one point intended to expand its occupancy to approximately 700 students. They retained KLOA to do a traffic study. So Louis had that data handy, and we were able to generate this chart to show that repurposing the existing Immaculata buildings for a school, particularly in the morning, would have a more significant impact on Bittersweet in terms of the number of vehicles. So you can see the in and out traffic for a school at 172, in terms of the proposed residential, 21 and 45, 21 in, 45 out. A school also has the phenomena of a midday peak. You're all familiar with it when Disney Magnet lets out in the afternoon. That does not occur with residential. We included what would be some activity for the residential building, but clearly not as significant as a school. And then in the afternoon and the evening, obviously the school is not operational fully, and so it's closer to, but still low numbers. Relative to the volumes, which is what's shown at the bottom of this chart, and you can see Bittersweet volumes in the morning are 200, 201 to be precise. In the evening, it's 56. So it's really that morning eastbound traffic. We can avoid it. There's also an advantage to seniors in the sense that they are not necessarily on a strict schedule. Most of them are probably retired. They are not working 9 to 5. So they have the ability to have a flexible schedule as to when they leave and come and go from the property. All of this information compiled into a study, submitted to the city's Department of Transportation. It has its own experts. It has its own traffic engineers. It reviews not only all of our traffic data, but also our landscaping with respect to the public right-of-way, driveways, the use of the property. It does its own independent evaluation, comments, questions, accepts or rejects. We've gotten ourselves to a point that CDOT has reviewed the traffic study, is in concurrence with the traffic study. As you can see from the way that CDOT indicates its approval is by stamping a site plan. This is the site plan you saw earlier with many more dimensions and details as required by CDOT, but you see the CDOT stamp at the lower corner. You will also see this is the more detailed, and if you give it a second, it will get clearer. The landscape plan, which is rather extensive as we upgrade the landscaping along the perimeter, but also within the site. Wind. There was some commentary concern about wind. We understand that there's some wind along Irving Park Road at some times of the year. So we retained a wind expert from Colorado, well-known, leading wind consulting firm. We had them evaluate the building. This is also at the 14-foot level building, not the shorter building. And they basically found no appreciable offsite impacts. That's attributable really to the fact that we have the existing Immaculatas providing a buffer. You can see some of the images at the lower that give you an explanation of how wind and buildings interact with one another. The lower left-hand corner is a diagram that they provided showing the predominant winds. The longer the green bar, the stronger the winds and the more frequent they occur. Predominant winds here come from the southwest. They are buffered essentially from our site by Lake Park Condominium as well as Park Place. There is, because of the separation between the buildings, there was no channeling effect. That's where you create essentially a tunnel within which the wind accelerates. That may be experienced by some of the other buildings that are here. We're about 200 feet from the new proposed senior building to the face of Park Place. That's a wide enough distance. We also have Immaculata setting a 4-story plenum across it. So in short, there were no offsite impacts that were determined to exist. And in terms of northeasterly winds, the existing Immaculata buildings, the terraces, the landscaping would also mitigate any impacts on nearby buildings.
Rolando, sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted to give a call for a few more minutes so that we can make sure we're leaving time for questions too.
I'm trying to go as fast as I can, so I'm
Okay,
almost there.
thank you.
Sewer and electric capacity, you can see here, we had the sewer capacity evaluated and we had consultations with the city's Department of Water Management. Essentially, this site will have to have, per city ordinance, on-site stormwater detention. The stormwater detention will have to be calibrated. These are tanks that are buried underground, will have to be calibrated so that the combined storm and sanitary flow from this site is not greater than the current flow of sanitary and storm today. So anything in excess of what is currently coming off site will have to be stored in the tank and held until there's sufficient sewer capacity. Electric service is simple. We will not touch the poles adjacent to the 3 flats except to disconnect from them. To the extent that more electric service is necessary, it will be on the developer to incur those costs. And the electric connection is likely to come from a vault that occurs on Bittersweet across from 4100 Marine, which only services 4100 Marine. Shadow studies. The short story here is that there is some impact mid-morning hours, but by noon, there is no impact because of the circulation of the sun. You can see the before shadow, before the building, after shadow on the right. That was summer. This is spring and fall. And you can see the brown is the new shadow, gray is existing shadow. Environmental sustainability. We preserve an existing landmark. It's an infill site, existing pave area that decreases offsite stormwater detention, transit-oriented development, and a variety of sustainable features that are included. There is a city requirement that we meet a sustainability matrix to make this building as environmentally friendly as possible, and we will do so. Summary of the changes. You can see the decrease in unit count. You can see the decrease in height. So it's approximately 58 unit decrease, about 60 feet in decreased height. Important to note that while we decreased unit count, we increased affordable housing. And that's because the city ordinance changed. So initially with the greater number of units, 495, we had 41 required affordable units. When we decreased the number of units on the project, we were only required 36 affordable units. But because the city ordinance changed from 10 to 20%, our current number of units would require 69 affordable housing units, proportional in terms of units with the rehab Immaculata, as well as the senior building. And all of those will be provided on site. We've also dramatically increased bicycle parking to about 234 spaces, including 54 along the perimeter. Parking remained the same at 118. I misspoke earlier with the 98, it's 96 and 22. Project benefits, and this is my last slide, Kylie. high quality modern service in an area that we believe needs one. It will allow area seniors to be able to age in place if they so wish. It will allow residents to be able to have their relatives live nearby if they wish. It preserves the landmark with improved environmental efficiency. It puts this property as tax exempt today. We'll put it back on the tax rolls, approximately $2 million a year to start. Provides additional residents to support the area's retail, provides additional jobs in terms of the staff in the senior building. We have allocated 15 parking spaces, 10 in the garage, 5 on the Irving Park lot for the bittersweet neighbors as a first priority, area residents secondly, and then the 69 affordable housing units on site. With that, I conclude. I apologize for the speed, but Kylie is a tough taskmaster.
Thank you, Rolando, for your presentation. Before we take questions from our committee members, a few groups have asked to provide statements. Susie Hunter will speak on behalf of Park Place. Judy Kahn will speak on behalf of Triangle Neighborhood Coalition, and Jessica Eves will speak on behalf of Buena Park Neighbors.
Thank you, Alderman Cappleman. Like he had introduced, I am the president of Park Place Tower. We are the largest high-rise and have the most residents located across from this development project. We are not against something being developed here. We just don't want this type of project that will land in this parking lot. While we agree with preserving the landmark, we don't want them to put up a tower that doesn't fit the landscape and the neighborhood. There have been previous opportunities that have been shot down for this project because it was a charter school or something else. So where are the benefits? What are the benefits? For us, our concerns are more than they are the benefits. It's easy to say that the view for everybody, because of course we are losing our view with this property, but that's not the main purpose. We have a lot of problems with a construction and what's going to happen when they start drilling. Let's think back to Miami. We don't want that to happen. No one has come here to check our building and what that feasibility will look like. We have traffic concerns. Our main entrance and our garage entrance is on Irving Park. We have a hard enough time right now during traffic, regardless if it's 6 a.m., 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 9 p.m. to get in and out. Everyone uses our front entrance as a turnaround. Everyone uses Frontier Street thinking it's a through street. Everyone has to turn around. We have obnoxious amounts of vehicles and trucks that come on this street. We just put in millions of dollars in ComEd vaults that we don't want to be sunk because of trucks on this street. Our garage and 3950s will be affected by this project. Our utilities are a concern. While you can say that the wind is not a concern, you don't live in our building. You have not experienced what this wind is like. We all had to evacuate to our lobby yesterday because of all the tornado sirens that were going off. It was not fun. Our elevators went to the ground floor. So you can say that you have all these wind studies, but you have not lived in our building and experienced our wind. The other utilities are flooding, what's going to affect us. There's also truly not affordable units in this. I'm not talking about the AROs, but true rents in these facilities. We can barely sometimes rent out the units that we have for rent or for sale. So this will just add more to our area. Yes, there were studies done, but they were biased. No one came and asked us. Did the city, state, and federal, did they ask us? Did they ask us concerns? They're based on anything that the developer told them, not from the residents. We did a resident survey as well, just like Buena Park. We did the exact same questions. Our residents responded negatively. They don't want this project. I've included that information on the alderman's website, or the alderman did for us. We were told to negotiate. Nobody negotiated with us. Nobody would negotiate with us. Where are the real negotiations? Where are our concessions? There weren't any. 3660 at the New Yorker, they were given concessions throughout this project. We've been given none. Has Buena Park been given concessions? Because nowhere have we heard that there are any concessions. While we appreciate the reduction in height, it still is a large building in retrospect because of the 10-foot ceilings.
Susie, sorry to interrupt you. It's been 3 minutes, if you don't mind.
Okay, I have one last comment.
Thank you.
But now I forgot what I was going to say, so I guess I can't remember.
Sorry.
But thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Susie. And you can always jump back in for questions. So thank you. And Judy, I'm going to pass it to you now.
Thank you, Alderman Cappleman. The Triangle Neighborhood Coalition is comprised of 19 condominium buildings located in this immediate vicinity of the proposed Immaculata project, representing the interest of approximately 4,000 residents. The majority of buildings in Triangle, 18 out of 19, strongly oppose the development. There have been 7 to 8 town halls hosted by the developer and attended by our aldermen, wherein thousands of people in this community voiced strong opposition to this project. Questions and concerns were raised, which they didn't feel were adequately answered. A petition has been submitted that have been signed by 1,223 residents, voicing strong opposition to this development, citing serious concerns over the impact this project would have on traffic, bus routes, and existing congestion. Attempts were made also to negotiate, as you heard, with the developer. The greatest issue in dispute is the 23-story high-rise. Mind you, that includes the mechanical penthouse. In August 21, Triangle issued a negotiation letter offering to reduce the height to 10 stories. In September 21, Buena Park Neighbors issued a negotiation letter offering to reduce the height to 10 to 15 stories. The developer did not respond for 7 months and then refused to negotiate at all on the height of the high-rise. Last night, a rally against this development was attended by over 60 people expressing opposition to this project. So it's been a lot. So I ask you all now, what does it take for a community's concerns to take precedence over the financial interests of a developer? How do you explain Buena Park Neighbors' support of a development project with a developer who refused to negotiate with them? When is it appropriate to ignore the heavy impact on an already congested community that an additional 437 units will have on existing horrific traffic made worse by Cubs games, concerts, and events in the park? The added congestion brought about by a development project of this size would delay bus routes, not just to this immediate area, but likely to all of Buena Park, affecting everybody. How are the constituents' interests being supported by the 46th Ward, where a proposed development would decimate a small one-way residential street and virtually landlock 2 large condominium buildings whose entrance and exit from their garages on Irving Park are directly across from the proposed site? Lastly, how do you push through a development project on a community so strongly opposed to it, where there is clearly no benefit to the people who live there, as there are 8, not 4, other senior living centers within a 2-mile radius? Triangle considers this proposed project a clear overdevelopment of an existing high-density area already burdened by traffic congestion and a lack of on-street parking. We respectfully ask you to consider the impact to this community and vote no on the requested zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And then
Sorry if I ran over a little.
Jessica, are you on too?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Beginning in January 2020, Buena Park Neighbors Association is engaged thoughtfully and proactively with the current proposal. I'm gonna abbreviate a little bit. Our engagement began with a community meeting where the developer presented its proposal and made itself available for questions and feedback. In the 2.5 years since then, Buena Park Neighbors has been extensively involved in collecting feedback from the community, negotiating with the developer, and facilitating communication and the dissemination of information. During that time, we understood that we would be called upon to present a final position on the proposed redevelopment, and because the site is located in our coverage area, that our position would carry significant weight. We did not and do not take that lightly. After significant review and consideration for the best interests of Buena Park, our executive board has decided to vote in support of the proposed development. In assessing this development, BPN had to consider the needs and interests of everyone in Buena Park and decide what most effectively promote good living by the lake. We assessed several notable downsides: the potential diminishment of quality of life for those residing closest to the site, the increase in traffic across an already congested neighborhood, and the accompanying increased strain on an already overtaxed parking infrastructure. Against these downsides, we also assessed the positives: the value of revitalizing and preserving a historic building in danger of falling into ruin, the generation of new affordable and family housing in our neighborhood, The introduction of a new wave of consumers for our many local businesses, some of which suffered dearly from the economic toll of COVID-19, and the creation of senior living and specialized memory care facility as a major public good and investment in public health that could even offer a way for members of our community to age gracefully in our neighborhood. Throughout our conversations and feedback gathering, only a small portion of our community expressed strong opinions about the proposed development. The voices we heard came predominantly and understandably from those residing immediately adjacent to the building. These voices frequently, though not uniformly, expressed opposition based on concern about increased traffic, scarcity of parking, and the impact of the height of the proposed tower. The feedback we received from residents outside the immediate area trended significantly more positive, though traffic and parking concerns persisted as a cause for concern. Ultimately, our choice is not between this development and the status quo, but rather between this development and the future. The status quo is untenable. Either the land will be redeveloped or it will fall to ruin. All of the feasible options for preserving the property will present comparable challenges for traffic and parking in the neighborhood. While there have been several efforts to explore preservation and redevelopment opportunities of the Immaculata building in the past, this is the first proposal that is financially plausible, and there are no known prospects for alternatives. Though other senior housing establishments exist in the north side of Chicago, the proposed building is distinguished by the fact that the units are rentals and include memory care support, thereby addressing a genuine public health goal. Furthermore, the new residents and caretakers will breathe much needed economic oxygen into our commercial corridors, improving the general welfare of the entirety of Buena Park. As a final note, to the extent that the redevelopment will create new job opportunities, the developer has expressed its strong intent to hire from the local community. This project presents real benefits to the neighborhood. Approving it ensures a landmark building remains a neighborhood asset, and the few notable deficits presented by the project would likely be inevitable with any future plausible alternative. Given that, Buena Park Neighbors Association has chosen to support this proposed redevelopment. We encourage other members of the 46th Ward Zoning and Development Committee to also vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie, Judy, and Jessica. We'll move into community questions. A reminder that committee members who have a question should chat all panelists. Kylie will then call on each committee member when it's their turn. And out of respect for everyone's time, please keep your question concise to ensure that we fit in as many questions as possible from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. So first we have Michael.
Thank you. My question is very simple. This senior housing has been marketed as something for the people in our community, but I've never been able, perhaps I missed it somewhere, I've never really been able to get a handle on what the cost is going to be to live in this senior facility. Can you address that?
Sure. The average rents will range in the $2,000, will be in the $2,000 range. There are some add-ons depending if people want a meal plan or not, but basic rent is about $2,000 average.
Thanks, Michael. Stuart?
I'm not sure. Are you referring to me, Stuart, or the other Stuart? That's
Yes.
all.
Sorry, yes, Stuart Berman, you.
Stuart Berman. Okay, well, I just wanted to chime in briefly because my role here is as historic structures head, and this is an incredibly architecturally important building. The Immaculata campus consists of 3 buildings designed by one of the foremost ecclesiastical and education based architects who has ever lived. Barry Byrne, who first got his start with Frank Lloyd Wright, went out on his own in 1915. This building was actually built by a group that began in Dubuque, Iowa. And within the span of a year and a half, they had gone from a small, essentially residential building to this large building you see now. The relevance of all this is that this building as a landmark, and it's been a landmark since 1983, is in bad shape. Although most of the original historical elements from Byrne are still there. This particular proposal, as I've come to understand it, is an opportunity to preserve a unique and important work by a very important architect. And as I think was noted in the Buena Park Neighbors statement, This is a unique opportunity. We have not had an opportunity like this that will look to preserve the building in its entirety, including its auditorium, which is a quite spectacular piece. So from the perspective of historic preservation, this is an outstanding opportunity to preserve this landmark building for a number of years, hopefully another 100 plus years, since we are now at the 100-year anniversary of this building. So from the perspective of somebody who is a member of several historic preservation organizations very interested in this, I would note that this is a very important thing to a very important building to preserve, and I'd encourage people to vote yes in pursuit of that preservation. So thank you.
Thanks, Stu. Louis?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Question from Lakeside Area Neighbors Association. We're wondering if this development will be accessible to senior residents who are on Medicare, and more broadly, will it, and if so, how would the development meet the needs of clients from moderate and low income backgrounds?
So I think taking the second part of your question first, obviously we will have 20% of the independent living, because those are the ones that are subject to the ARO on site. So that's 20 units of affordable housing, affordable senior housing in the building, with the rents pursuant to the city schedule for 60% of median income, which is what the city's law requires. So that will be in the building. I don't know the precise answer to the Medicare question. I apologize for that. It hadn't dawned on me. I assume it will have to, because we can't discriminate, but I don't know precisely.
This is Alderman Cappleman. I've written a book for individuals needing health care, and Medicare only pays for rehab for up to, I think, around 20 days. Physical therapy, occupational therapy. It would be Medicaid that would kick in to help someone with their activities of daily living.
Okay, great. Thanks, Louis. I'll come back to you for your other questions, but Michael, you're next.
Yeah, I am interested in the affordable housing and how that might be marketed. Our organization sees a lot of demand for affordable seniors housing, and 60% of the, which is required by the median income required by ARO, is actually higher than the where the market demand is, which is closer to 30 to 50%. But I guess a question that's very specific is the owner, and I'm not sure is America, the Islamic College is completely out of the picture here, but I'm wondering if the owner is willing to affirmatively market both the affordable units and the market units to people who can apply with rent subsidies, because they now allow rent subsidies in our higher cost neighborhoods like Uptown to support rents for one bedrooms up to 2,000 and probably more when the project is done per one bedroom. So it's very possible with advanced opportunities on marketing to have a greater number of affordable housing units in the project than just the 69. And is that something that you're willing to talk about and consider?
The short answer is yes. Happy to work. So the marketing is controlled by the owner of the property. By the way, AIC, American Islamic College, is a seller. Keith Giles is the developer, future owner, we hope. But the answer is yes. We can certainly work with your organization or any organizations to make sure that we hit particularly population from the neighborhood in terms of our affordable units.
I can also add that the city's law department has encouraged all aldermen to abide by the affordable requirements ordinance rather than make up our own rules. So on-site is set at 60% of the area median income. If that's to change, we have to change the ARO. If it's off-site, which many residents do not want, then it can go into the Affordable Housing Opportunity Fund, which can provide housing for people earning between 0 and 30% of the AMI.
And we would agree with that, Alderman. It's just that when you rent to people with rent subsidies, their incomes are more likely to be in the range of 20, 30, 40, 50% of the median income without necessarily having a required different threshold.
Fully understand, but the city's law department is really asking you, they've sent out emails to every single alderman stating that we need to abide by the ARO, and I will do that.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Alderman. George, you're next.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
This has to do with the concerns about lack of negotiation. And I just want to try to clarify a few things on that. First of all, I think Rolando at the end of the Buena Park Town Hall on May 4th, he pretty much said that negotiations are over because you have minimized the height and therefore the number of units in this development as much as you can. Is that correct?
That is correct. We heard the neighbors' comments, the neighborhood comments, community comments throughout the spring and winter of last year. And we decided that rather than play a game of coming down step by step, to take this building down as much as we practically could from a financial perspective, dropping it about 60 feet in height and about 60 units in total. So we did respond. In a sense, it wasn't a give and take type negotiation, but we heard you and we gave you our best offer, so to speak.
Okay, and then.
Oh, sorry. George, you're on mute, but sorry to interrupt you. We're going to do one question at a time, but I'm going to add you back to the list if you have another question, just to try to get to everyone first, but I'm adding your question number 2. Thank you very much. Susie, you're up next.
Thank you. George, I think you and I are on the same wavelength, and hopefully I don't ask a question you're going to. This is in regards to the negotiations. It just feels like there weren't any negotiations, there wasn't anything in good faith, especially Buena Park with their negotiations, and they're the ones that are holding a big part of this because the development is in Buena Park. That there were so many negatives, there was no negotiation in what they requested to you, Rolando, but yet, and this is to Buena Park then, why are we still supporting when there are so many negatives to this that all of a sudden, without any negotiating, there's a support for this?
Susie, do you want me to answer that or Rolando?
Or all of you, whichever.
As we said in our statement, the biggest reason that we're supporting it is because the alternative, the downsides of this development are a given, basically, unless we decide to let that building fall into ruin. And we already have a couple properties in the neighborhood that are not well used and come up routinely when people are complaining about them. The U-Haul site is the one that we referenced a whole lot. We don't want another one of those in the neighborhood, which means that something needs to be done with this property before it happens there. Nothing on the table is going to stop there from being increased traffic. Nothing on the table that's feasible is going to stop there from being reduced parking. There's going to be pain no matter what happens. They did negotiate with us some. They did come down in the height. We did get, one of the things we asked for was to have 2-bedroom units. We did get that. So it's not, we didn't get everything that we wanted. We didn't get the height reduction to the extent that we wanted. We would have loved if they'd gone above for affordable housing. But we did get some of the things that we wanted. And given the downsides of putting the kibosh on this development and then the property just sitting vacant, because the Islamic College has made it clear they can't afford to maintain the property. That's the actual choice that we're making, is the future where that property is not maintained versus this development, not some theoretical, maybe something else will come along. And it's a tough decision. It's a decision that wasn't comfortable to make. It doesn't feel good to be like, well, the concerns of these people matter less than the concerns of those people, or feel like we can't make everybody happy. But given the big picture for what the future is, we didn't really see an alternative that was viable.
Rolando, did you want to add to that, or?
I was just going to say that it's it's kind of ironic because we listened to, Susie, we listened to you and all of the concerns that you raised. We explored them thoroughly. You may not like the response or the results of our exploration, but we did take them seriously. And we heard you about reducing the height. We did that. Heard you about reducing unit count. We did that. We heard the Bittersweet neighbors, there's concerns about parking spaces to replace what was taken site. We did that to the extent that we could. We've tried to be as responsive as we can and to give where we can on every topic.
Okay, and then Louis, your second question?
Yep, there we go. You mentioned some comparisons with peer providers of senior services in the area, and I'm wondering what the cost comparison is of the senior services that would be offered at this site as opposed to similar providers in the area.
So I believe they're generally comparable, except for some of the senior providers in the area are condominiumized. So it's a different cost model where you purchase your unit, and then I think in some cases they may purchase it back once you pass, and we're in a rental model.
George, your second question. 1 second, George, you're on mute still.
All right. I had hit your unmute, not my unmute, apparently. This follows on that. Is it, you had mentioned also that this tower, the senior tower, was required to be able to afford, first of all, the overall development, and specifically to be able to renovate the original landmark buildings. Is that correct?
So yeah, if you look at this property and think about just renovating the landmark buildings, it's about $50 million of cost, which is probably more than just that building can sustain. So by building the senior tower, we offset some of that cost and make rehabilitation of Immaculata more viable.
Okay, so you're talking about then the tower actually is profitable so that it's subsidizing the redevelopment of the original buildings, so to speak.
So to speak.
I'm not maybe using the right words here, but in other words, money's coming out of that tower in addition. That's going to be a profitable venture, I assume. Has to be, right?
Has to be.
Okay, and is that also because it's a senior care tower with, 3 levels that are already projected, the independent assisted and memory care?
It's really good. Two parts. There's a market for the senior, so it generates, obviously that generates some profit. If not, you wouldn't build it. But also because the increased development, the volume of development on site helps to take some of those base costs off of the Immaculata building.
Okay, so there's really 2 kinds of development here within this. I mean, you've got the redevelopment just of the existing Immaculata buildings. Those become, I'll call them standard apartment rentals, correct?
Correct.
Open to anyone at any age.
Correct.
Because I actually have found a number of people who thought the entire complex was senior only. I don't know if anybody else here thinks that, but that was not clear, I guess, the way things progressed here and the way people heard about it.
George, do you want me to add you for a third question? Or
not at this time.
Okay, thank you, George. And then Louis, to your last question.
I believe that it was about the percent of AMI targeted to the affordability or the affordable units. So I believe that was answered already.
Great, thank you. And then Susie, another question?
No, it was answered.
Okay, great. I don't see anyone else in the queue, so just a last call. Does anyone else have another question before we move to attendees? Okay, so we are done with committee member questions for now. Alderman.
Okay, we will now take questions from our attendees. A reminder to please click the quote, raise your hand button. If you have a question, Maggie will then call on you when it's your turn to speak. When you are called on, you will be able to click unmute on your screen. If you have any technology questions, you can write them in the Q&A box. And out of respect for everyone's time and to ensure that we get to as many questions as possible, please be sure that you stick to short and direct questions. We will take one question per person at a time, but anyone can raise their hand as many times as they would like. Maggie will mute each speaker after their question in order to keep the meeting moving and to unmute the next speaker.
Thank you, Alderman. I am going to unmute Sarah Kay. Sarah, you should be able to speak at this time.
Yes, I am. I think everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Alderman, Mr. Acosta, committee members, block club presidents, attendees. First, I want to thank the committee to welcome residents' comments. I'm really happy to see some familiar faces that I haven't seen in a while. I used to be president of the Sheridan Park Neighbors Association, and so it's really nice to see people, and I am sorry we can't do this in person. I have now moved to Buena Park, and so I do have a couple of questions, and I will ask a question to our moderators. I have 3 questions. Should I ask the 3 questions one after the other, or would you prefer that I ask the first one and then be put at the back of the...
Gotcha. Sarah, if there's questions that go together, I think it's okay to say 1 or 2, but if there's separate questions, we just ask that you raise your hand again, and I'll just note that and make sure to call on you again.
Yeah, they're separate. So I'm more than happy to come back at the end. Okay. I guess the first question would be, and I'll raise my hand again, but I guess the first question would be around, I would love if Mr. Costa could kindly explain the rationale behind not providing a traffic study with data that's reflecting a non-COVID situation. To us in our street, it seemed like a fairly reasonable request. And it's hard to believe a developer such as your employer can provide a survey that's actually reflecting, you know, a 2022 view of the situation versus a 2020 lockdown view of the situation. It's a really large development. It's really short. It's a one-way street. It's a 200+ unit building on what you have yourself said would be a main entrance in Bittersweet. So I feel like a traffic study that's actually reflecting 2022 experience would be pretty easy to provide to reassure neighbors.
So thank you for your question. The traffic study, while it did a count during COVID, then was calibrated. So CDOT has counts throughout history of the site, of the immediate intersections. Louis at KLOA also had some counts that he had done in the area. So while the original counts were done, we realized that those were low because of COVID. So they were increased to reflect what is the historic or more typical traffic in non-COVID times in the immediate area. So it was calibrated to what would have been non-COVID situations. Mind you, that even in 2022, we're not fully out of COVID. So it may not reflect what I'll call pre-COVID and true post-COVID conditions.
Thank you, Rolando. John D., you should be able to talk at this time.
Hello to everyone on the committee. My name is John Dugan and I live on the Bitter Street Suite along with my family. We occupy 2 different units. I want to actually address Jessica and the Buena Park Neighborhood Association and their statement and endorsement of this, because the one thing that endorsement is not is thoughtful representative of the community. There are numerous, and I think it's incredibly important for the aldermen and committee to understand that the systemic engagement was systemically misrepresented. Concerns that were brought to attention were classified and dismissed if they were not in favor of the project. Legitimate concerns were not addressed. Attempts to find a win-win solution were not addressed. They were dismissed. And so at this point, what I'd like to understand is how, Alderman, you will respond to a community that has a block association that is failing to do its job of representing accurately, from the survey completed and statistics done to the actual accounting of information, which is far more in alignment with the other two associations that spoke today. Because the representation on the block, quite frankly, is a large proportional representation of your area. So can you help us understand how you're going to make a decision on this when the community feels the Buena Park Neighborhood Association has failed to do its job?
Sure. I'm going to do what all 49 of my colleagues do, and that is they take input from the community. And I'm adding additional a piece that's very important to me, is that when people vote yes or no, I want to know the reason for it so that I can understand the thought process behind that. And I want to make sure there's an informed decision being made. And then I will take that vote, and then I will make the final decision. For all 49 of my colleagues do the very same thing. So that's what I'll be doing as well.
Thank you, Alderman. Vicky M., you should be able to unmute at this time. Vicky M., are you able to unmute? Okay, just for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next person, but Vicky, I'm going to come back to you right after. Karen C., you should be able to unmute at this time.
Thank you. Good evening. My question is emergency vehicle access. If there, God forbid, should be a 5-alarm or 10-alarm fire in that high-rise tower, how would a hook and ladder truck access the building off of Bittersweet? All they'd have to do is make a right turn and a ladder would knock down a Bittersweet structure. And the archway coming in off of Marine is too low to accommodate a large truck.
So thank you for your question. And I actually meant to mention this during my presentation, but in my rush to try to keep to the schedule, I missed it. So we have had this plan reviewed by the City of Chicago Fire Department and its Fire Prevention Bureau. And what you've seen is precisely what they requested. So we have separations on site. The idea is that the fire truck would come on site via the Bittersweet entrance, because that is the only entrance available. And then we have allowed enough room in the site for them to be able to maneuver and actually put out their outriggers. So they would come onto the property and fight the fire from the property. There's also multiple places where the fire department, one in the new building, two in the existing building, can connect its apparatus for hoses and water supply. So it's been reviewed. It is in keeping with all the regulations, and we've addressed all of their comments to provide fire protection for the building, which obviously is also fire protection for the neighborhood.
Thank you, Rolando. Vicky M., I'm going to try one more time. Are you able to unmute? Okay, Vicky, if you would still like to ask your question, please just put something in the Q&A box and I'll make sure to get rid of any tech issues if that's what's happening. I'm gonna move on. Viola R., are you able to unmute at this time?
Yes. My question is, you talk about all of the seniors facilities in the area. What studies have you done that show that we need another facility that 22 stories and this many units?
So first of all, there are no comparable facilities in the area. So that I think we showed by just our initial reaction to this. Developer has looked at this area. I mean, it's $100 million investment. It's not being done on a whim. There is sufficient data to show that the population is here to support the number of units that we are proposing, and the number of units drives the size of the building.
Thank you, Rolando. Robert C., you should be able to unmute at this time.
Yes, hi, thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Just a question for you on traffic. I live at Park Place Tower. It seems to me we have a reasonable proposal here that would upgrade the quality of the existing structure and probably add a lot of benefit to the neighborhood. Plus, at least I'll have a place to go right across the street from me if and when the time comes. So I love the idea. But on a serious note, on the traffic, I didn't have a chance because it kind of went up pretty quickly. Your traffic study and the charts and tables that showed the demand and capacity of the existing infrastructure. I don't necessarily think that traffic is going to be the killer objection that would make me oppose the development. But I'm wondering if we've really addressed, the city and the developer and the neighborhood have really addressed what can we do from an infrastructure standpoint to improve traffic flow, given the fact that we're going to be increasing capacity in the neighborhood. I just know anecdotally, you just have to go out on Irving Park Road during rush hour to know what it's like. And I'm wondering if you guys have really, it's not about, it's hard to project the future, but I just wonder whether we ought to look at different levels of assumptions and whether traffic patterns, stop lighting, so forth, needs to be really looked at in a more realistic way under different sets of assumptions.
So from our perspective, we assumed existing conditions would continue because that's all we can assume, because the developer doesn't control city infrastructure. That's really up to CDOT ultimately. I know that CDOT has studied some improvements along Lakeshore Drive, but I don't know what the status of those improvements along Lakeshore Drive nor of adjacent streets. If conditions remain the same based on the review by CDOT, we should not have a negative impact on traffic. If conditions improve because CDOT makes some improvements, that would only further diminish any impact.
Thank you, Rolando. Mike M., you should be able to unmute at this time.
Yes, thanks, Maggie. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Alderman Cappleman, this is mainly a question for you, and this is out of curiosity. I'm a 3-year resident now on Bittersweet, and I think it'd be safe to say that everybody within Buena Park would love to see this parcel developed. I think the majority of people close to the parcel do not want this project to go through, me included. So my question is what, for you and your administration, what process do you have in place to source and vet opportunities to develop this parcel? And do you have a waiting list of other opportunities? Because it seems like, and this I'm saying this because the young lady that spoke for Buena Park Association made it sound like we're dancing with the only girl that looked at us at the dance. So what process do you have in place to source and vet other opportunities? And what else is out there on that list? Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So no one else has come forward to present a proposal at this site. There have been some in the past. It's my understanding the community has rejected those. The process that I use to make decisions is I do something different from all 49 of my colleagues. I have a ward-wide community process where I have representatives from all parts of the ward. Those areas with higher density have higher representation. We also seek to have input from a variety of different people. So each organization gets to choose their own representative. I do not choose them. Most of my colleagues choose the representatives. I will not do that. I also put forth a lot of effort to make sure that we hear the voices of people who have low incomes. So we purposely chose representatives who represent that group. I've been on the city zoning committee for 11 years. I believe I am the only alderman who has a vote of the representatives. My colleagues, if they even have a zoning committee, they listen to them and then they give their sound, opinion about what they want. I don't do that. I want to have a very transparent process where I actually hear the votes, and I want to make sure other community members hear the votes of other members of the zoning committee. What's also very important to me that's I've not stressed enough in the past is that I will make the final decision based not only on the vote, but also for the reasons for those for the vote as well.
Thank you, Alderman. And just to let everyone know, just to keep the meeting on track, we're going to have 15 to maybe 20 more minutes of Q&A. So if everyone could just keep their questions as concise as possible, it would be really appreciated. Ruth C., you should be able to unmute at this time.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So my question, just a little background. So I am the current interim president of Lakeside Area Neighbors Association. But the question that I have to ask is wearing my nurse's hat in regards to ambulance access to the property. You did briefly show the map with the traffic patterns of like how residents would come in and how staff and like garbage vehicles would access the property. But what about ambulances that would likely be bringing people back from hospitals or in the event of emergencies, taking people away to hospitals? How would that traffic work because of Bittersweet being a one-way and just that really trafficky corner? So if you can describe that a little better to know about the emergency vehicle access in that case.
Happy to do so. So ambulances take street priority. They can pretty much, if it's true emergency, they'll go wherever they need to go. From an access perspective, they have the ability to access the property from Bittersweet, that entrance. They also have, there's enough width in the Marine Drive entrance. It's 14 feet high in terms of clearance, and it's 13 and a half feet wide, which is wider than a traffic lane. So an ambulance also would be able to enter from Marine. And if it were for the Immaculata building, it could also go to the Irving Park parking lot. So all three access points would be available.
Awesome. Thanks, Rolando. Chantel H., you should be able to unmute at this time.
Hello, do you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Hi, my name is Chantel Haberman, and I'm an owner of a condominium unit at 3900 North Lakeshore Drive. 3900 is 2 doors down from the Immaculata. And I wanted to come on first to express my point of view as I feel that the neighbors of Park Place and even Bittersweet have had a very loud voice that doesn't necessarily reflect all of the other buildings in the community and as well residents in the community. So I wanted to state my case. First, I wanted to say that I am in incredible excitement and support of this project for a number of reasons. The first of which is the restoration as well as of the Immaculata site. For those who live in the neighborhood, the site in the last few years, with the type of renters or occupants that have been in there, in particular since the French school has departed, that site looks like a dump and it's an eyesore for the neighborhood. And I feel that it negatively impacts the property values of the neighborhood. So a developer coming in willing to put in money into landscaping and maintaining the site is incredibly welcome. The sooner the better. Second reason why I'm in support of this development is that I have an 83-year-old mother who lives actually quite close at 3470 North Lakeshore Drive, which technically is in Alderman Tooney's district. But since their area is so close to ours, they as well are impacted by this development. And if anyone, there were questions about whether or not a senior center, another senior building is needed in this neighborhood. You obviously have not checked out some of these senior facilities in immediate wards. If you're trying to find a place that's nice for your mother, that doesn't look like a total dump, this development is sorely needed. And it's sorely needed as well because I would like, my mother would like to be able to age gracefully in her own neighborhood, which this would qualify. And I too would like her to be able to be close to me so that I do not have to move and leave this neighborhood, so that I can be close to her when she enters into a senior facility. So I'm very much in support of this facility. I would like to know, assuming that, and I hope that the committee votes in favor of this development because it is sorely needed. I would like to know, assuming that the committee does vote to support this development, how fast can they start digging?
So assuming we have the support of the committee and the aldermen, we would go through the city process probably in the next few months. After that, we'd have to go into construction drawings. So probably construction starts at the earliest next spring, and it takes roughly 12 to 18 months to complete.
Thanks, Rolando. Tracy D, you should be able to unmute at this time.
That was my question. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. All right. Marianne L, you should be able to unmute at this time.
Hi. Something Susie said really piqued my interest about having trouble renting individual units in the Park Place. I see, Mark, that you've answered in the Q&A, but I would like an answer anecdotal from Triangle Neighbors or Park Place. If you understand the vacancy rates of rentals in your area and what price points to try to understand the demand for the non-senior housing part of this. I understand many of the units are rented individually, and that is kind of like the small business version of landlords. These apartments might not always make the MLS. So do you have any information about that?
I can answer that for Park Place. So a lot of the owners at Park Place bought when times were really good. And then when the market crashed, we have quite a few owners that are upside down and can't even afford to sell because they will lose. So they're forced to rent. But then because we get saturated in this neighborhood sometimes with rents, there's times that there are 40, 50, 60 units for rent. And then we go through other times when there's nothing out there for rent or for sale. So the pendulum swings depending on the time of year. Our rents can go from, because we have studios all the way up to 2 bedrooms, can go anywhere from $1,100 to $2,500 depending. And then that's not including assessments. Our assessments range from $700 up to $1,500, $1,600 a month. So there's a lot of times we have a lot of units on the market. We have units that will sell for over, we have units that sell for under. So, we'd be up against those rents as well if this goes through.
Thank you, Susie.
You're welcome.
Edward G, you should be able to unmute at this time.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Edward Gersh. I live at Lake Park Plaza. I've lived here most of my adult life. I'd like to comment on some of the things that we've heard from various individuals. I hope you all were listening when Judy Kahn spoke at the beginning. She was one of the first three speakers. She represents a group that in turn represents 19 buildings in this area. So when she speaks, she's speaking on behalf of more than 4,000 people, the overwhelming majority of whom have indicated that they are against this project. I think we need to look at and listen to the people that actually live here, not a contractor that's coming in from another place and does not live here, not people that live in the far fringes. One of the speakers spoke about she felt that her group did not really like the project, but they would rather have a bad project than no project at all. I know I'm not saying exactly what she said, but that's the way it sounded to me listening to it. I think the people that live close by, the ones that are across the street, Park Place, Lake Park Plaza, 4100, 3950, I would think that their opinions would weigh more heavily than people that are in what we generally call the neighborhood. We live across the street. We're the ones experiencing the traffic on a daily basis. We're the ones that had problems with our sewers last year because it was already overtaxed. I mean, we're the ones that don't have parking places when we need to fix our garage. We live within 2 blocks. I don't know how many of the 40 of you do. I know the alderman lives a couple of miles away. So perhaps those that live close by should be given more consideration. So I would appreciate it if you would think about that. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Edward. John D, you should be able to unmute at this time.
I'd like to echo the statement that was just made about the sheer volume of individuals who are opposed to this within the region. And if you look at the proportional rate of the residents in the ward, 50,000 residents in Buena Park, over 4,000 in that tower alone, tells us exactly what the density of folks are. What I found disappointing throughout this entire process is that I understand when a developer says, this is as far we can go. I respect that that is the limit you can push to make money. But I'd like to understand from the alderman, what are you going to do if this proposal is accepted to help resolve the issues that will emerge in the community and bring together a task force to address third paths, third ways forward? Because I didn't see that happen during this course. And I would hope, as someone who represents this volume of people, you would take seriously our call to action for you to do something and bring us together to find a fix after this is approved, rather than walking away. So I'd appreciate a response to that.
Thank you, John. Actually, that has already been addressed. I understand Rolando Acosta has worked out some type of a community agreement. Rolando, could you talk more about that?
Sure. So I was contacted by the immediate neighbors along Bittersweet, including the Paddington, which technically is on Bittersweet, as well as Irving Park Road. Those whose properties effectively touch this property, and then I think one building over in terms of Bittersweet. We talked about what effectively we did was we've made various statements about the process for construction and what we will do and won't do during construction. So we memorialized that in a document. We've also made statements about the parking that would be available for the Bittersweet neighbors. We memorialized that in terms of construction. In terms of a document, we agreed that we would appoint a project representative to interface with a specific individual from that group, so that if there were issues during construction, there would be clear lines of communications. And also memorialized statements we made about delivery vehicles and staff and using the marine entrance as opposed to the Bittersweet entrance, as well as having this building excluded from any parking permit zones that are in the immediate vicinity. So all of that was memorialized and signed with a group of bittersweet neighbors.
Thank you, Rolando. And just to let everyone know, we're going to do 2 more questions just to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. So Timothy L., you should be able to unmute at this time.
Yes, my question is actually for Alderman Cappleman. This relates to the question asked by Michael Rohrbeck to the developer. Michael asked if the number of affordable units could be negotiated to be higher than the ARO requirement, and or if the income standard could be negotiated to be lower than the city standard. And Alderman Cappleman, you seem to say that neither of those things is allowed. Am I misinterpreting?
The city's law department has told all 50 aldermen that they should abide by the Affordable Requirements Ordinance rather than make up their own rules. And so I'm not an attorney. Before I was an alderman, I was a social worker. But I've learned as a social worker working in the medical setting that to follow the advice of attorneys. So I will do that in this case as well.
Thank you, Alderman. And then Timothy G., you're going to be our last question this evening. You should be able to unmute at this time.
Thank you so much, Maggie. So my name is Timothy Giannotti, and I'm the current president of the American Islamic College. And so I want to just echo something that was stated in the Buena Park residents' conclusive statement, and that is that the question really is not between this development and the status quo. The question truly is between this proposal and the future. And I just want to make clear what dereliction would mean. So dereliction would mean no parking for anyone. Dereliction would mean the absolute dilapidation and erosion of this landmark building. And so dereliction would also mean, would have an adverse impact upon property values, and eventually dereliction would mean the purchase of the property by another developer who would build a tower. And so even internally, the college, as we've looked at survival scenarios for the college, every survival scenario that we've looked at included the construction of a tower, because there is no way to make this 3.3 acre property viable, economically viable, without the construction of a tower on that 3.3 acres. And so we have not found, it's not the job of the alderman to line up purchasers for any homeowner or any property owner in the ward. And so we have used CBRE. We have, for years, we have looked for a suitable buyer, a credible buyer, a responsible buyer. And we, the board and the administration of the college, we feel that we have come to a relationship, a working relationship with a very moral, ethical, transparent buyer who truly does, or developer who truly does have the best interests of the community at heart. And so, again, I'm not being paid to say this. My salary doesn't come from the developer, but I am saying that that there is right now, there is no credible alternative on the table. And that we have looked at many scenarios, but every single scenario for the viability of this property has included the construction of a tower in that empty space on this 3.3 acre site. And I want to make very clear what dereliction would mean. And so dereliction would have an adverse effect, even a very immediate adverse effect upon the wider community. And so, the parking, the available of affordable parking is not something that I think the residents of the area could ever take for granted, but it is one way that we have tried to negotiate our own survival as an institution at a time when many other colleges who are more established than we are have closed their doors. And so I just want to be very clear with the community what dereliction would mean. And I also just want to vouch for my experience. my working relationship with the developer, with Keith, as well as with Rolando, has been a refreshing relationship. It's not about anyone getting rich off the Buena Park community. It's about making this property viable. And in order for this property to be viable, the construction of a tower is a historical inevitability. And so I just want to make that very clear. I said that at the last Buena Park community meeting, and I'll say it now very clearly, that I think in Arabic, we have a proverb that says that the neighbor is more important than the house and the companion is more important than the road. And I think when it comes to developers, I think that Mr. Giles will be an excellent neighbor. And I can just say that because I've had I think a very robust and extensive collaborative relationship with the developer, and I can speak to my own experience. Thank you.
All right, so I should go on then? Maggie?
Yes, Q&A is now ended, so you can continue, Alderman.
Thank you, everyone, for asking your questions and providing feedback on this project. Out of respect for everyone's time, we will now move on to committee deliberation. The committee will determine whether or not they want to vote tonight.
So, hi, everyone. As always, this is now open space for committee members to discuss and again, to decide what you'd like next steps to be. And so just to keep things moving and respect everyone's time, you all don't need to raise your hand. You can unmute and we can have a conversation.
Can I make a motion that we take a vote on this proposal this evening?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so now that we have the motion and seconded, I will go through roll call. And then a reminder that this is not a vote on the proposal. You are voting whether you would like to enter the vote on the proposal. Is that clear to everyone? I know that's the word vote a lot of times, but this is a vote on whether or not you would like to vote on the proposal, not your opinion on the proposal. And I'm just going to go based on roll call. If you haven't heard your name called, just shoot me a chat or unmute yourself. I know we had some late joiners because of technical difficulties. So again, on a vote, yes, no, or abstain on whether you would like to enter the voting procedure. Curtis? 1026 West Montrose? Yes. Douglas?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
George? George of 30,
You're on mute, George.
I would like to ask the Alderman a question about what we're doing right now before anyone else decides whether to vote. May I?
This is a vote to decide whether or not people want to vote yes or no on the project.
Okay. I have something that really says whether we should even be voting. That's the
So
question.
it sounds like you want to vote no then.
I'll say no, and I really would like to comment on this if I ever get a chance.
thank you, George. Yeah, so that you're just saying you don't want to enter the vote yet. So I'm marking you as no. Anna?
Oh, no. Yes, it's no. It's no.
Yeah, I'm marking you as a no to entering the vote. So yes.
Correct.
Anna?
Yes.
Robert?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Stuart?
Which one?
Sorry, Stuart Berman.
The answer is yes.
Thank you. Susie?
No.
Alice?
Yes.
Patrick,
No.
Glenn. Thank you, Glenn. I got your chat. John,
Abstain.
Alex,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Michael.
It's 6 o'clock.
No.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Michael Zink,
No.
and then Michael Rohrbach.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jason,
Yes.
Louis,
No.
Marty, Marty Tangora, are you still on? Let me just see if he's on mute.
No. My vote is no.
Thank you, Marty. I gotcha. Jackie,
Yes.
Rochelle,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Chester,
Yes.
Mike,
My car? Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Sarah.
Yes.
Was there anybody who I did not get marked?
That's me, Maria from Nuna.
Thank you, Maria. And what is your vote?
No.
Thank you. Was there anybody else?
I believe Mike Rafferty is representing Triangle Neighbors. Am I in error?
Yes, my vote was collected. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
And anybody else that I missed? Okay, and then I want to apologize if there's anyone from the presenters for the development committee. We asked that they sign off. I think some of them are off already, but I apologize for not 100% confirming that everyone was off before taking that vote. Is anyone who presented? I believe everyone hopped off, but just in case I missed somebody. And then I just last called, did anyone get missed from who was in attendance but did not submit a vote for whether to enter the vote? Okay, not seeing anybody. Give Maggie and I just one moment to tally that.
I believe Rolando is still under the attendees.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Thanks,
see,
Susie.
I do know that there was another person that had the same last name as Rolando.
Well, it says
And
Rolando Acosta.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Susie. Clicked the wrong button. I don't see him anymore, but let me know if you.
I do not see him either, so I believe he did leave.
Okay.
Also from Giles, what was the first name from that group?
Would be Keith or Kay.
Okay.
Is he, Susie, is he still on?
No, there's another one with somebody's last name was Giles. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
I must have missed this when you said it, but the development team is supposed to be off of here for this process. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sorry, Greg. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to jump off then.
Thanks for your time.
I also like to know, this is Judy Kahn. Am I supposed to be off for this part?
So anyone who's an attendee is still welcome to remain, but it'll just be the committee members debating. So I can make you a attendee.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Maggie, can you confirm I have a vote of 23 yeses and 8 nos?
Yes.
Okay, so a reminder, this is just an agreement from the committee to take a vote tonight. This is not a final decision. Is there anyone that wants to add any comments or discussions or final thoughts before we take the vote? I see a couple hands up. Rochelle. You can unmute. I don't know if you're able to.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hi there, thank you. So one of my questions was,
Rochelle, it might just be me, but I can't hear you anymore. Can everyone else hear Rochelle still, or did we all lose?
I cannot.
Okay, Rochelle, we'll bounce back to you. I'm gonna mute you and unmute you again and see if that works, but we cannot hear you right now. George, you're next and you're unmuted already.
Right. I've been told I think too much and I'm too logical, so bear with me. But when we take a vote, like, let's say we are going to take a vote, or we've just voted that we will take a vote. My concern is this: at our last meeting, which was the 4600 Marine Drive one, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Then on that one, we voted, and it was a no vote by 1 vote. And then it was discovered that that 1 vote of the no's was rogue, shall I say, and did not vote according to their governing body. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
I'd like the alderman to answer this, because this can
Yeah,
be redirected.
the answer is yes.
Okay, good. Then, so the vote was changed to yes, and so that development got approved. There's another issue here. I'll take it after this one.
But I need to add that I, from the very beginning, since I created this process, I still have the final say, as my 49 colleagues do the same.
Okay, I know. And we did email after that, and I resent to that email today. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but in it, I reminded you that, especially at the Bittersweet Town Hall, you were extremely insistent that you vote to whatever the Zoning and Development Committee decides. You said that 3 times at that meeting. Now, I know today you've changed your tune, whatever you want to call it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Would you restate what you've changed?
So I said in the beginning that I want to know how people vote. I also want to know how they vote, and that will guide me in my final decision. The reason why I did that, I mean, it's always been the case that I've always done that, and I've always happened to support the vote. The first time I have not done that was the last time we had an upzone. That was in Castlewood. I went against the Castlewood Block Club and created an upzone because I was fearful a single family home could be demolished. But I want to reinforce that I make the final decision because I believe strongly that decisions should be informed. There were a lot of backroom deals that were made in the past, which I object to. And just as I've been very public that I am opposed to aldermanic prerogative, and I'm the only alderman in the city of Chicago that expressed that they are against aldermanic prerogative. I am also against representatives voting the prerogative of their block club. That means that if Buena Park Neighbors right now supports this, I do not want you to vote yes for this solely because Buena Park Neighbors supports it. I want you to vote yes or no based on reasons that you believe are important to you.
Okay, and I agree that you have the authority to make the final say, and I've always told people that. I'm just clarifying that in the past you've made it so clear, especially at the Bittersweet Town Hall, 3 times over, that you would go, and that's why we need to make sure they talk to their zoning rep, because you were going to agree with the zoning reps. So that's a bit of a change. There might be a little grayness in the way things have been stated, but I'm glad you clarified that.
Sure.
Now, the question is this. I am supposed to vote, not my personal opinion on this development, but I'm supposed to vote according to my governing body, which is my Lake Park Plaza Association. Now, is what we did today and what I heard supposed to influence our votes whatsoever?
So it's important that every zoning representative get feedback from their community members to see how they feel about things. But just as I do in city council, I get feedback from constituents. But then I also hear new information when a proposal is presented, and I hear from my colleagues and questions. And so I take in mind the value that my constituents want. So I want to have a vote that reflects their value with the new information that I may have that may change the way I vote in city council.
Okay, so if I'm influenced by what was stated here today, either by my fellow reps or the people who attended today and spoke, then I should have the opportunity to go back to my governing body and say, hey, I think we need to reconsider the vote you asked me to make. If I don't do that, I am rogue, just like happened in the 4600 Marine incidents, correct?
So George, just to clarify, everyone, I mean, folks have their own philosophy, but at the end of the day, the organization chooses the representative, and part of that role is representing the goals of the community. But there's a reason we have representatives as well, and the reason groups choose their reps is they believe they will act in the best interest of that community and take into account their feedback, while also giving folks a chance to hear from fellow community members, to hear the proposal of the developers. So some people might change their mind. A lot of people come in having an idea of what their neighbors' concerns are. So our job isn't to tell you how to vote or how to perceive your vote, but the goal is to get a representation and a snippet of what the community thinks through having representatives who have spoken to their community and have an idea of what the concerns are.
Okay, I
So
think my
some
point.
people have voted no if they want more time. Sometimes we have multiple meetings on a proposal. Sometimes we have one, and that is part of what this group is deciding.
But we have decided to vote tonight.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and if I feel something should change, I can do that on my own without my governing body's input?
Have you spoken? I mean, the groups, theoretically, you would be speaking to your group and seeing how they would like you to vote. But again, there is the knowledge that the committee members sit here and have this discussion and hear information. So that some people do change their votes, yes, but that is a discussion folks are having with their own block club, with their group. People have different philosophies of how they'd like their committee member to act.
So you're saying the 4600 governing, no, I'm sorry. I forget what group it was that person represented, but you're saying that governing body did not give that person the authority to change their vote.
Yes, that their concern was their previous discussions had determined that.
Okay, and I don't know if I have that authority.
Totally understand, George. And there is a yes, no, and abstain option that anyone can use. And as the Alderman tried to clarify earlier as well, we know that some folks were not clear whether or not the Alderman would still make the final decision. We are hoping that everyone's vote and their preface to why they are voting the way that they are will help the Alderman to inform his decision. He is also taking into account all the comments we heard from the attendees tonight, from these panelists, and the full process.
Final comments. I don't believe that all our votes are equal.
Okay. Thank you, George. And we can also always talk about this with the Alderman if you want to sign up for a conversation in the future too. But I'm just going to respect everyone's time and keep moving. But I think that.
Okay, no, that's it. That's it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, George. Rochelle, I know you had some tech issues. Are you back on?
I am back on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I was walking by Truman College and it picked up their Wi-Fi, and then their Wi-Fi like was blocking Zoom. So anyhow, my question was if you could remind some of us how long this current developer has been in talks with, the 46th Ward and all the various neighborhood, groups and so forth. Like, how long have talks been in place with this particular developer?
Rolando's not here.
I can tell you Park Place was engaged in January of 2021.
Okay.
Buena Park Neighbors was approached January of 2020, right before lockdown.
Okay, thank you. I only asked that because during the call today, some people had voiced that they are very much in favor of some kind of development happening there, not this particular one for the reasons they stated. And I think it's important that we all keep in mind that this process, from the time at which a developer even raises its hand to make an offer, go into talks, to the time at which something like this is happening today, to the time at which, if it was approved, how long it even takes to break ground is a very long time period. And so that's just something I'm, keeping in mind as I think about voting. That's all.
Thanks, Michelle. I know Susie, you have your hand raised, and Jeff, you do too.
Yeah. And I've expressed this before at these meetings. It's very difficult when the whole group comes together and hears all this information to then make a vote on the spot, because I feel like some things do need to get digested. But with that, does anybody know from Alderman's office, out of all the representatives, how many are truly out of the Buena Park boundaries?
I mean, for
the
those
majority of the representatives here out of Buena Park versus some of us who are south of Buena Park and we're not considered Buena Park.
So for folks who are on, if you want to say if you're within the Buena Park boundaries, but I would say the majority, it's dispersed throughout the ward, because the point of this committee is to not look at proposals just within the block club boundaries, because for projects that are larger, they're deemed to have an impact on the entire ward. But if folks want to just unmute, if you are a representative who falls within the Buena Park boundaries, if that's helpful, Susie, to get a picture.
Or maybe not in Buena Park. It might be easier.
I live in Uptown, but not in Buena Park neighborhood.
Uptown United encompasses all of Uptown, which includes Buena.
Lana stretches from Sheridan to Clarendon between Lawrence and Wilson.
But is that Buena Park or not Buena Park?
No, it is north of Buena Park.
Overstreet is not in Buena Park.
If it's easier for folks as well to write in the chat, we can do it that way too, just so we give everyone time to speak.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Glenn and Mark were chatting too. So yeah, Susie, people are going to start dropping it in the chat, but
sure.
Yeah, the point of the group is to encompass the full ward. So Buena Park is a large community within the ward. So it's not as if Alex is the only representative of that area, but we do.
It can be the panelists and not the attendees.
Yes, it'll just be the committee members chatting. Thanks, Susie. We'll let people drop a chat in. And then Jeff, did you have a comment?
Yeah, let me also lower the hand. So I just, there's obviously a lot of impassioned people within the community, and that's fantastic. That's exactly what this is for. This is not a comment on the development one way or another. We're going to have time for that, and presumably there may or may not be. Sounds like there's going to be a vote. It is it's a little bit scary to like hear and digest a lot of dialogue about how much focus there is on how and why people vote the way they do, and what sort of like demand it sounds like is being made on that. Kylie, I mean, you put it very well. Like, if we have problems with the process of this committee, the vote, etc., then we should address that and handle that. But the idea from the panelists that like we are, you know, going into in some way, shape, or form in-depth reasons. Like as the alderman said, you know, there's a committee, there's a vote. It's seemingly a really strong process, more so than I know in any other ward. And it is still, at the end of the day, the alderman's decision, and whether, you know, how that makes up, it's a really slippery slope when you get to talking about that. And I would just encourage people to think about that. There is no electoral process that I know of that has any like additional context for, please like elaborate on how you voted, why you did, and extend that narrative. And it, you know, be conscious of that, you know, as it comes up. And if the last Z&D committee meeting where, George, I'm going to totally, it was the 4600 Marine, as you put, if that changes as a result of the alderman's decision, then again, that's the alderman's decision. If that is fundamentally changing how we are now expected to go about type of electoral process, that, you know, it's not a small deal. Again, this is not a comment one way or another on the development, positive, negative aside, but it's that I think needed to be said, because I haven't heard that type of sort of investigatory or like that, you know, that's a totally different type of detail. So be conscious of that.
Thank you, Jeff. George, I know your hand is up. Did you have a new comment?
Oh, George, you're muted, by the way.
So George, while you
Nothing more. I didn't know my hand was up.
okay, no worries, George. Thanks. I'll lower your hand, and then Scott.
This gets back to some of what George was saying about the process here. And, you know, it obviously the alderman is elected and he has the last decision. And the 4600 North Marine Drive was a strange one. And I wrote to you, James, and took exception to saying that somebody who sits in the meeting and decides what to do and voted against their organization. It's you almost wanted to have it both ways. But what I really take issue with is the insinuation that there are backroom deals that members are doing and doing it to support local groups and everything. This is a democratic process. We're all elected or selected in different ways to represent different interests in the ward. And, you know, it's politics and this is how it works. And, you know, you said it tonight, backroom deals that people are doing. And, you know, a lot of people vote different ways on this. And, you know, it's sort of damning the process for people to spend a lot of time looking and listening and then having this thrown out there that people are cutting deals. You know, 50 aldermen cut deals all the time. This is politics, but it's people taking the time to listen, to vote. And George brings up a good point. I mean, I voted to proceed to vote, but are we able to get input going back to our folks, or are we really or is our vote reliant on what we hear and how we want to go? And I think there's some pretty compelling cases made tonight by the developers. So I just have problems when you accuse members who spend a lot of time that we're cutting deals and we have a preordained decision on this. And I think that's far from it and does a disservice to everybody who's putting a lot of time into this.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate everyone's feedback. We are over time, and I know I'm sorry, we try to keep it to the 2 hours. I think if it works for everyone, we'll do a last call for comments related to this proposal. There has been a vote to enter a vote as a committee. That said, as a reminder, everyone has the option for yes, no, and abstain. And that can be something that you consider in terms of voting on this actual proposal. And then our office's door is always open. You all have my email. So if in terms of committee organization, structure, how Z&D works beyond this, because I know people have clarified some of their comments aren't this proposal, but the process in general, to stay focused on this proposal and the time you've all taken to review those materials. Let's focus on entering the vote and deciding on this proposal, or if you abstain or whatever your choice may be and why you're voting that way. And then in terms of that discussion on the committee itself, you can reach out to myself and for those who want to discuss the process with the aldermen, or if we want to, focus on another meeting to discuss those processes. Those are all options, but I just want to make sure we're all respecting each other's time tonight and staying focused. That this meeting is about a specific proposal. So again, apologies. I know we're hitting over time, but Timothy, did you have something? No. Okay, I'll come back to you, but Alex?
Thank you. So as comments wind down here, I'll pipe up. Hi, everybody. I'm Alex Wolking. I'm the Buena Park Neighbors representative on this committee. Usually on this committee, I stay pretty quiet and observe and listen to what everybody says and just kind of take it all in. I've been working on this for Buena Park Neighbors for the last 2.5 years. This has been a very long process for Buena Park Neighbors and me personally. I actually have my whole folder on this that is several pages thick of notes. I want to, there's a lot to go through here, and I'll make this as brief as I can. This was a difficult decision for Buena Park Neighbors. Over the last 2.5 years, I have received hundreds of emails. I have an email folder dedicated just to this project that has over 174 emails in it that was actually just cleared out down from 211. It has been, this project has gone through many iterations. Buena Park Neighbors has taken community feedback. We've done 3 town halls. We did 2 last year and 1 back in May. Every single town hall that has been done, all the feedback was sent directly to the developer via Rolando Acosta. We've sent all the feedback to them, and the project went through some different phases throughout that the last 2 years based on that feedback that's been provided. Last summer, when things really started to kick off with this development, I was connected to Miss Judy Kahn, who you heard from earlier this evening with Triangle Neighbors, and along with her and a few other neighbors with Triangle and with Buena Park. We got together a few times last summer to talk about drafting our letters of negotiation. Triangle did theirs, Buena Park Neighbors submitted theirs. My understanding is that the reason why it took so long for the developer to respond to our letter is AIC went through some leadership and board changes to the point that the sale of the building had to be reprocessed and voted on again within their organization. I don't want to speak on behalf of AIC, but that's my understanding. So that's why it took so long to get a response from the developer. While we were formulating points of discussion and negotiation last summer, I went and everybody was talking about all these buildings that are quote unquote comparables. Admiral the Lake, the Breakers, I forget the Brookdale, I think was the other one. I went and met with the president and CEO of Admiral the Lake. I had a 2-hour meeting with her. I went there during a staff changeover. I went there to see and personally see from my own 2 eyes what the traffic was going to be like. I did notice, some traffic changes. I did notice, cars coming and going within a 30-minute window of, staff turning over. And, seeing that in action was certainly eye-opening. And what she also told me was that they are at 97% capacity and they have a waiting list at that building. And so as far as demand goes, the fact that Admiral at the Lake, those are condos that you buy and then sell back to the Admiral. They're not rentals. It did indicate to me that there is a demand for this. So there's that. I presented that to Buena Park Neighbors. I presented that to Triangle Neighbors Coalition last year. And we put our points together, and that's how we came up with reducing the height. And the height was mainly a result of the the hundreds of emails I got from folks on Bittersweet and from the letters that I got from the condo association buildings on Bittersweet Place, which I then forwarded to the alderman, which he posted on his website. So everything that's been given to me, I have presented and turned over to the alderman's office and to Buena Park Neighbors. As far as the point goes, and Kylie, if I'm running over, please stop me, but I think it's important because of the information that I have. When we looked at this project as a whole, and I've said this from the beginning, and I've gotten a lot of hate mail from people that have just been downright nasty, and to the point that someone from Bittersweet wrote a very negative review on my Google business page saying I was a bad representative, which was totally uncalled for. So the things that I have heard over and over again, we talked about the height, we talked about the loss of light, we talked about all of that. And as I've said from the beginning, and where I got a lot of hate mail from, was Buena Park Neighbors makes their decision based on all of Buena Park. The name of the organization is Buena Park Neighbors, not Bittersweet Place Neighbors, not Kenmore Neighbors, not Hutchinson Street Neighbors, Buena Park Neighbors. When we had a zoning development, a zoning issue with 800 West Buena 5 years ago, the people who showed up to that lived on Hutchinson and Buena. We didn't have anybody from Bittersweet. We didn't have anybody from Kenmore. We didn't have anybody from Montrose. It was the people that were immediately adjacent to the property. And Buena Park did not take a stance on that. Nothing. They didn't say yes or no. They did not take a stance. When we had an issue with 928 West Cullum, I was a high-end rehab home that wanted to go in for executives and CEOs and attorneys to get their lives together and recover from addiction. That was vehemently opposed by the people who lived on Cullum Avenue, and Buena Park Neighbors did not take a stance. And in this particular case, when we looked at this development and when we looked at years past, we had no precedent to go off of. And because Buena Park in the past has been Switzerland, they've been completely neutral. And we knew no matter what we did, we were going to piss people off. Whether we voted yes, that we knew people on Bittersweet were going to be upset with us. If we voted against it, we knew other neighbors would be against it because they don't want to deal with blight. They don't want to deal with a building that is sitting empty and breeding grounds for God knows what. So, for people to say that Buena Park is not doing their job, I respectfully disagree. We have done our job. We have gone above and beyond the call of duty to elicit neighborhood feedback. And the fact that we get this last survey, we got 78 responses, 68 of them were from Bittersweet. And which we took into consideration. We had a 2-hour meeting. I am not an executive board member. I present the information, I organize all of this. I am a volunteer. I have nothing to gain from this. And this is something that, as we've gone through the process, this was something that we took. We went through every last comment. We read every single comment that was left in that survey. And ultimately what it came down to was we have two options. We can either vote yes and have a development that is it taller than what we want? Yes. Would we like to see it smaller? Of course, but there's nothing else to pick. We could vote no and say that, we'll just wait and hope and pray that something else is going to come along. It is not the alderman's job to find a buyer for this property. It's everybody's job. So if you want to blame the alderman, blame the alderman. But you know what? We all had an obligation to go find a buyer for that building as well. And it's been sitting there for years. So, I'm probably not making any friends. I'm going over my time. But after 2.5 years and hearing the same feedback over and over again, I've said we have to choose our hard. It's hard to have an empty building and it's hard to have a development there. There is no right answer. And, it's as I've said over and over again, it is in my opinion, our best worst option. And this was not an easy decision to make, and I helped as much as I could. So,
Alex, I'm so sorry.
I know I'm done. I'm bringing home my closing statement. So that's it. I thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks everyone for hanging in there with us and giving your time and energy, and as everyone said, your passion. As we have a vote to enter a vote, I'm going to move us into that section just to respect everyone's time. I know I've already gone over, so apologies. But again, there are 3 options for this vote: yes, no, or abstain. If we don't hit the necessary votes to abstain, it would be a non-decision, which again is something that the Alderman will have to keep in mind. The thing I want to highlight, I emailed you all about this, but a difference in procedure from previous votes is, as the Alderman mentioned earlier, along with your yes, no, or abstain vote, he would ask that you very briefly, let's keep it to 30 seconds or less if possible, give a reasoning as to why you're voting yes, no, or abstain. So again, I know that is a slight shift. I emailed you about it earlier, but we're going to enter the vote. I'm going to read off the same list. And again, unlike last time, this is your vote with your vote as your representative in favor, against, or abstention on whether you think this development should go through as it was presented today. Are there any questions about what we're voting on or what is requested? A yes, no, abstain, and a brief 30 seconds why you're voting that way. Any questions on like the procedure aspect? Okay, great. And then Maggie, are you ready to count as well? Okay, great. So when I call on you, please a yes, a no, or an abstain, along with a brief 30-second, reasoning for why you're choosing to cast your vote that way. Curtis?
Yes, for ARO and senior living.
Thank you, Curtis. Douglas?
Yes, 3600 went through a similar process just last year about the City Club apartments on vacant land just north of us. Looking at the proposal, we think this is a good use. It'll help benefit and preserve the existing buildings. And for us, as long as the traffic impact has been studied, we're good to go.
Thank you, Douglas. Mary.
Yep, voting yes, because our condo board discussed this pretty intensely, and those who gave their opinion voted yes, and so I am trying to respect that opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Linda?
Yes, for 3750, and we need to do something. It's been years without a credible plan. I think that concessions have been made. It's a great option, and our board is for it.
Thank you, Linda. George?
I am voting no to represent the Lake Park Plaza condominium. And the reason would be that it has been felt all along that the kind of plan as being proposed left little for negotiation, regardless of how much the developer might have said they did do. And we do not think it's an appropriate use of a redevelopment, even though we do want to see that particular property developed.
Thank you, George. Anna?
Sorry. I represent 3950 North Lakeshore Drive, and for all the reasons that were stated in the Triangle Neighbors Task Force negotiation letter that has already been eloquently discussed by Susie and Judy, our building all 660 units. We have done surveys and town halls, and they have repeatedly expressed all those same concerns that were laid out in the letter. So for that reason, representing all of those voices, I have to vote no.
Thank you, Anna. Robert?
Very happy to answer yes. This project provides a progressive future for seniors in desperate need of housing and end-of-life care who want to live their twilight years along the lakefront. We welcome the prime timers who will enjoy this thoughtfully designed and necessary housing.
Thank you, Robert. Michael Waltz?
Thank you. Yes, I'm voting yes. There are things about this I don't care for, but I think preserving the building is extremely important. I lived for 20 years down the street from an abandoned, deteriorating hospital. You don't want to have that. And I think that most of the objections we're hearing about this would exist no matter what development we put in there. You would still have traffic, parking, shadow things. So yes, it's a positive for me.
Thank you, Michael. Susie?
I will register my vote as no. Our residents feel that the negatives outweigh the positives and feel that we have not had any concessions given to us outside of whatever Buena Park has received.
Thank you, Susie. Alice?
700 Bittersweet Condo Association votes no. Mainly because of the height of the tower. We don't feel the developer went far enough, limiting the height. And I have a feeling too that once this is built, you are going to have such a mishmash of architectural styles in a very small area. And I don't think people are going to like the way it looks.
Thank you, Alice. Patrick?
So I'm voting no, but with the caveat that I strongly support development on this particular lot. Probably more than most. My grandmother went to high school at Vehicular in the 1930s. By the same token, I also lived across the street at 4100 North Marine when I was younger. And so I'm probably conflicted in many of the ways the neighbors in that area are conflicted, in that they both want to see something happen at that lot, and they also have other concerns with the density of the project there. I think there's a lot of there are, however, a lot of positives about this particular development. Certainly, I'm a strong supporter both of reclaiming and revitalizing the historic buildings as well as the senior housing. So I think those are both important qualities. What I guess troubled me the most, and what probably tipped me over the edge, because it was a pretty close decision, was learning, and I guess Alex, I think maybe had explained some of this away, but I still feel that when I talked to the Triangle neighbors, their concerns about trying to meet with the developer and having a 7-month gap between communications, I thought was concerning. And I feel like this development, in very similar fashion to what it is now, could get over the top, but I really think that they deserve at least one more go at it. And it would be nice to see them sit down and talk about it. So that's the long and the short of it. But so I'm going to vote no.
Thank you, Patrick. Glenn? All right, and Glenn was having some audio issues, so I'm just going to read what he chatted. He said yes, because 1, historic preservation, 2, affordable housing, 3, senior housing, and 4, I believe in ward unity and neighbors supporting one another. Glenn, thank you. You're being marked as a yes. John?
We are, Beacon Block Club is abstaining this evening. Our meeting last night to discuss the proposal was, postponed due to inclement weather. And so thanks.
Thank you, John. Alex?
Yes, and I just went on my tirade, so.
Thank you, Alex. Jeff?
We vote yes. We sent a note out to get feedback from the from the CSNA involved. We found no major opposals, and all of the commentary and documentation seemed to, the pros seem to outweigh the cons.
Thank you, Jeff. Scott?
We vote yes. I found Alex and Buena Park's involvement and thoroughness in negotiating and researching very compelling. That helped influence my decision tonight. Other strong arguments, historic preservation, and really the need to, having gone through elders and memory care and assisted living, and a grandmother who lived in the the old Admiral, there's a real need for this housing, and demographically there's a need for it here. And I think the benefits of this proposal outweigh the negatives, but I do credit the work of Buena Park in helping influence the decision tonight.
Thank you, Scott. Michael Zink, but I think Michael might have hopped off.
Yeah, Michael had to leave, but asked me as vice president of East Lakeview Neighbors to vote on his behalf. Our board voted against 7-3 with 2 abstentions. East Lakeview Neighbors represents the area just across the street from the lot, everything basically south of Irving Park. And the general sentiment was, and I think, well, I think there's a lot of respect for the Buena Park neighbors and the work they've done on this, which I think is admirable. Many of our members and board members were in the area just to the south, and I think the concerns that they had that have been expressed by others tonight, were the ultimate swaying vote in that.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Patrick. The members do have to be present for the vote to count, and I did specify that for folks, so I just want to be consistent and fair. But
okay, I could have him call back in if you want.
If you want to see if
I think he had to put his child to bed, but
totally understand. If you want to check, Patrick, but just to be fair, I did tell everyone, like, for the vote count, they've got to be present. But I know the alderman heard those comments. But thank you, Patrick. Jason.
Graceland Wilson, yes. We like to defer to the local list of local block clubs. Buena Park Neighbors did an incredible amount on this. I've been involved in a lot of meetings on this, a lot of discussions. They addressed an ever moving target up through tonight. I thought they did tremendously well. And there's a lot of public safety benefits to this. And we're always looking for that aspect. And obviously it fills a much needed gap with the senior housing and other housing.
Thank you, Jason. Stuart Berman.
As has been referenced by a number of people here tonight, this is an important step in preserving a very important and internationally known building by a very important architect. There's no doubt that this building needs to be preserved. I think that Mr. Giannotti's comments about the state of the building are persuasive, along with what I've learned through this process about Immaculata. I think this proposal, which is the only one on the table right now, ensures that the buildings are going to be renovated and preserved. And on behalf of historic structures in Uptown, I would vote yes.
Thank you, Stuart. Louis?
Lana has not reached a majority consensus among our members, and we would like to see further community engagement as part of this process extended, including of things like traffic patterns using non-pandemic era data to forecast likely impacts of this property. So we are abstaining.
Thank you.
And Kylie, just to let you know, Michael Zink did hop back on.
Oh, thank you, Maggie. Michael, are you there? Can you unmute?
Hi, I am. Yeah, my vote is no.
Thanks, Michael. Patrick touched on it a little bit, but do you want to give like a 10-30 second reasoning for why you're casting the no? Still there. Okay, I'll come back to you, Michael, if you're still on. Well, Marty. Let me check. I believe
Marty Tangora left and said that he was abstaining from Magnolia Malden.
Okay, thank
It's
you,
in the
Stuart.
chat.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart. And so, as I said, we'll take those comments, but for the vote count, you have to be present to cast. But thank you, Stuart. And so Mark Martin's hopped off. Jackie?
Oh, I'm going to vote. This is really, really, really hard. I'm going to vote yes, but I do hope, I don't take lightly the concerns of the residents who are there and who are passionate about how this will affect them. I think there's definitely, I hope that the person who said that they worked with the developers and they found them to be real people, concerned people. I'm just hoping that's true, because the folks who this will impact the most, their concerns need to be addressed. And I just hope that there's more conversation. But I do agree in terms of the preservation of the property and the senior housing and the affordable housing. I'm gonna have to not abstain as I was going to, but I will vote yes.
Thank you, Jackie. Maria?
I abstain on behalf of Nuna because I have not had the opportunity to get a clear direction from the Nuna Executive Board. And just for the record, I think this committee should have a rule that that a vote should not be taken on the same day as the developer's first presentation to the Zoning and Development Committee. Because I just feel like I haven't had a chance, it doesn't give us a chance to take this back to our communities.
Thank you, Maria, for both vote, and we will take note of that comment. So thank you, Maria. Rochelle?
Rochelle Gonzalez, Racing Clifton Block Club. I vote yes. A few of the reasons would be, one, the preservation of a historic building, I think is really important. I don't think we see that happen enough. So that would be nice to see that happen. Secondly, the addition of more senior housing, which seems there is a demand for that. And I would say, among some other reasons, one just being the additional tax revenue that will now come from this property.
Thank you, Rochelle. Mark?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I vote yes. Primary reasons. I don't know how long that property's been on the market, at least 5 years. Don't quote me on that or post anything, but it's been vacant for a long time. It's not well taken care of since the French school moved out. I personally kind of like the combination of new construction and preserving a really nice old building. Lastly, wearing my real estate hat, one of the reasons that prices are going up for everybody, not only gas, inflation, whatever, is we are underbuilt in the US by 4 to 6 million homes. So for anybody who votes no and then wonders why the cost of housing goes up, give that some thought. I'm a solid yes.
Thank you, Mark. Tony?
I am voting yes as well for a lot of the same reasons that everyone else mentioned. The fact that we have the opportunity to be able to preserve a historic building that, has been deteriorating. So the opportunity to be able to restore that, to provide affordable housing units that are desperately in need throughout Chicago. senior housing. Definitely have gone through that process with family members of my own, and the difficulty in being able to find quality housing for our senior communities. And also I'm not sure that there would be anything. I mean, if you were talking about $50 or $50 million just needed to be able to develop just that building in and of itself, I don't know what could go in that space that wasn't to that scale, that wouldn't create the same kind of issues that the community is concerned about. So I don't mean to sound like I'm not sympathetic to their needs at all, but I think that this seems like a viable option here to kind of restore and provide a lot of benefit to a community that's needed.
Thank you, Tony. Chester?
I vote yes. And I'd like to make a comment too. As a retired city traffic official, I've worked with your office and the community on a number of different fronts. And I think this is a well thought out project. And I've been, as a city official, many projects I've been involved with in the past years whereby people said no. And then 5 years later, there was nothing happening there. Something lesser ended up being accepted. I think this is a solid, well thought out project. And I'd be happy to work with your office to address any traffic concerns that are still around.
Thank you, Chester. Mike Rafferty?
The tower scale and height is proportionate to the neighboring developments, and it is set well back from the property lines. Rehabilitating these landmark buildings and putting them back on the tax rolls is a big win for the neighborhood and city. Traffic is not a factor. Seniors don't drive much. The developer is allowed to take a risk on a possible senior living market that may or may not exist without government second guessing. Neighboring owners do not have property rights protecting their views that might be affected by this. I vote yes and support this development.
Thank you, Mike.
Is it Mike Rohrbeck?
No, sorry. almost there, Mike Rohrbeck, though, I promise. Is Dan still on?
Yes, I am actually. I vote yes. And I also want to state, with my real estate hat on, with having a ton of studios in this development, as well as a senior living tower, which is not going to be as bad as having a bunch of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom rentals as a tower, I don't think the traffic is going to be as bad. That Irving Park is a wind monstrosity anyways. I don't think it's really going to factor into more wind on Irving Park. I think it's always been an issue.
Thank you, Dan. Patrick?
Patrick who?
Yes, Patrick Waters.
Patrick Waters. Okay, Patrick Waters, Uptown Chicago Commission. I vote yes. The reasons are preservation. I think the building doesn't have a lot more years unless somebody puts significant money into it. That's the only way to save the building. I don't see anything on the horizon that's going to do it. Two, anything, if you tear down that building or it's destroyed, you're going to get higher density than that one additional tower plus the units in the rehab building. So unfortunately, I wish I could think that the density would not come, but the density is coming. So we might as well get the benefit of restoring, preserving an important architectural building and trying to maintain some of the character that currently exists in that corner if we're going to get the increased density.
Thank you, Patrick. Sarah?
Yes, Sarah Wilson, Executive Director, Uptown United, voting yes. We appreciate the historic preservation of this incredible structure and the auditorium and all the features, and believe that it's an incredible asset that should be preserved. And so we applaud them for factoring that into the plan, but also a lot of the fact that not only do they increase the ARO, which is sorely needed in the neighborhood, but they are serving a undersegmented or underserved community of our seniors, and the ability for individuals to age in place within their families. Uptown United's Development Committee believes strongly in supporting this as it allows for folks to age in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And then last but not least, Michael Rohrbach.
I'd like to we're supportive as an organization, Voice of the People, of preservation, seniors housing, and even continuing educational institution at that location. A wonderful building that needs to be saved and improved. And we believe in affordable housing coming to Uptown because it means that we add back racial and economic diversity, and we add back people who are less reliant on cars and spend more and shop more within walking distance of their homes. We talked earlier about affirmative fair marketing relative to a project like this, and the city's been seeking public input on that policy regarding ARO developments during this year, because they know ARO developments are being approved and the owners are discriminating against people overtly and covertly based on their source of income, like rent subsidies or Social Security, or based on race, to be frank. And so they know that this is a serious issue. We heard the alderman not wanting to negotiate on improving affordability provisions, but I don't believe that's a matter of law or ordinance. That's just a policy thing coming from the Corporation Counsel's office, which our aldermen don't have to go along with. So in hopes that we, in good faith, can talk about some of these issues of providing truly affordable housing, I'm going to vote no for now and hope that the conversation continues.
What?
Thank you, Mike.
I just want to add, Michael, I appreciate the passion, but I know a number of aldermen who get in trouble for not listening to legal counsel. So I feel compelled to do that.
I understand your position, and I understand what it means to the Corporation Counsel represents the city. The city doesn't represent Corporation Counsel.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Alderman. I think that we've talked about that, and it makes sense to maybe schedule a meeting to keep that conversation going outside of committee. I just want to make sure before Maggie and I finalize the count and double check that I did not miss anybody who's here, but who has not yet given their vote. Did I miss anyone? Okay, and so with that, Maggie, please double check the numbers, but I have 21 votes for yes, 6 votes for no, and 3 abstentions.
I have the same.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. And so again, thanks everyone for adding that additional feedback to the reasoning behind your vote, and the alderman will keep all of that in mind. But for now, Alderman, I'm going to throw it back to you to close us out.
Thank you. So I will later announce my decision, and as soon as I do, there'll be an email sent out to all the members of the 46th Ward Zoning Development Committee, and then we'll also send out a newsletter as well. So thank you all so much again for attending our committee meeting and for your patience. It was a long time, but this is very, very important. And thank you for sharing your questions and feedback. We will share the link to view this meeting and any other updates on our website. So thank you all and have a wonderful night. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.